Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to the AEC Ramadan Reflection series of live talks. We will inshallah be hosting daily talks during this blessed month of Ramadan, and despite not being able to meet each other face to face or have access to our beloved masjid, we hope to keep the spirit of Ramadan alive with our online activities. Tonight our special guest is Shaykh Waqaus Ali, who is the CEO and founder of Ilm to Amal, Knowledge to Action, a pioneering tarbiyah program and an educational think tank for Muslim learners and educators, which focuses on character development, social responsibility, and financial literacy. Check out www.ilmtoamal.org. Before launching Ilm to Amal, Waqaus spearheaded a national strategy to improve understanding of money matters in British Muslim communities. He successfully established a nationwide network of Muslim faith schools, madrasahs, mosques, and darul ulooms, and built strong relationships with scholars and educators from different schools of thought. With over 15 years of experience in strategy and leadership development, Waqaus is a seasoned advisor to a number of bodies and steering committees in the UK and internationally, including philanthropists, educational leaders, academic bodies, and central government. Waqaus's mission in life is to help young people and find their sense of purpose, belonging, and responsibility to flourish in life. His passion is to empower disadvantaged communities to write their own narrative and change their trajectory. Tonight, he'll be talking about character building activities during this Ramadan under lockdown. Before we start, I'd like to just go through some basic housekeeping. If you're joining us through Zoom, please ensure that your mic is muted and your video function is off. These are located on the lower left of your screen. Please feel free to post questions on the chat function, which is located on the lower center of your screen. These will be answered after the talk, and if time permits, we may be able to take one or two live questions as well. We will also be streaming live on YouTube, where a recording will be available in due course. So with that said, I would like to introduce Shaykh Waqaus Ali. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Nabiyil Ummi wa ala alihi wa barik wa sallam tasliman kathiran kathira. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I would like to say big Ramadan Kareem to all of our listeners, wherever you may be tuning in from. It's a pleasure, alhamdulillah. Many of us have reached here to this blessed month of Ramadan safely, and unfortunately others were not so fortunate and they haven't reached this blessed month. So we do shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we got to see another Ramadan in very difficult times. And this is we say this is a month of the Quran, and no doubt it is the month of the Quran. But I also remember the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, where she was describing the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the walking, talking Quran. So he was like a walking, talking Quran in the sense that whatever he preached, he embodied head to toe, and that is a remarkable sign of a true and honest man, a prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this topic tonight I'm going to be sharing with you, or I've been asked to talk about, is one which I'm very, very passionate about. And it's something that I think is really important and relevant for our time, and not just for the Muslim community, although we could better understand it because of tarbiyah being a very central part of Islam. I think across the board in the countries I've traveled for this work, I think it's such an important challenge for adults, parents, educators, government, states, of how they look at the condition of the people, and in particular the younger generation. How do we get them to become the change makers of society, the beacons, and the contributors to civilization or contributors to that particular society. So this topic I'm going to just bring in here, that's been assigned to me, is this one, sorry, apologies, wrong one here, I've got the wrong one here, this one, here we go. This particular topic that I'm going to open up, it's about the tarbiyah, or the character development of our children whilst they are under the lockdown at home during Ramadan in one, and number two, Ramadan in the pandemic conditions, in the pandemic climate. So I don't have much time really to dwell on the introductions and give an introduction into this topic. I've tried to make this less theory-based and less abstract. One, I think many, mashallah, brothers and sisters who've been fasting after a 18-half-hour, 19-hour fast, our attention spans will no doubt be at the lowest. So it is a late time. I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible, inshallah. And I would love for you to send in your questions and participate. And if there's nothing that you understand about, please, by all means, shout, inshallah. I will be checking the Q&A. Okay, so the topic that's been given to me, and before I start, I think it's, when Dr. Omar and Brother Amir contacted me whether I would do this, it's been as you can imagine, being in the front line of an educational charity, and in this situation, lots and lots of parents wanting help with their with the children at home, and education challenges that they're going to be facing all of a sudden now. It's been really for us, it's been a hard time, because we've been at the front line in terms of helping the parents whose children are not at school. But what's been interesting is that's been a very good, unique experience for us, because for the last 10 years, we've been lobbying parents to take more of a role in the tarbiyah of the children. And primarily, it's our role as parents. I have 3 of my own. They're all behind the camera right now, watching me in admiration. And I think they've got a notebook of everything I say or tell other parents to do. They're probably holding me to account. And that's rightly so. That's how it should be. We should be people of action and substance. And this is what we've been doing as an organization. So the primary objective of knowledge to action, or primary objective of ilm to amal, as it was introduced, is really for the murabbi to take responsibility. In this case, the murabbi, the cultivator, be that the educator in classrooms or schools, the parents at home. Primarily, it's the parents' responsibility to take the responsibility of their flock, as per the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about the shepherd, is to take responsibility of their flock and really create a whole village where tarbiyah can take place, and we can nurture responsible, confident, confident, active, ethical Muslims. And I think this pandemic has no doubt is going to have some tragedies. I've lost an uncle of mine very recently who was actually, ironically, was my murabbi. He was the one I'm talking about here in terms of the concept of having a whole village approach to offering tarbiyah. It doesn't have to be just be the parents, but also the teachers that are involved in that community, the youth workers, the counselors, the extended family, the visitors, the neighbors. This is what we call the whole village approach to nurturing a confident child. And when I was growing up, the whole village was created by my father for me, and in that were noble men and women. Not all were family members, but one sterling individual was my uncle, and my father's brother, who really broke the social norm, the cultural taboos, to really invest in young people. And unfortunately, we lost him 2 weeks ago. So may Allah have mercy on his soul and all of the people who have fallen as martyrs in this pandemic. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on their soul and raise their ranks in the akhirah and give them the death of a shaheed, inshallah. And this topic, I think, is so relevant to that, because as I'm talking to you now, I can speak from experience. I've been fortunate to benefit from that mentoring that was offered to me by a number of people, and in particular my uncle. But also what we're doing at Ilm to Amal now is to reverse the trend where we have absent fathers, we have mothers who are taking burden on their shoulders. And in the end, a lot of what our Islamic education is based on is actually ta'aleem and not tarbiyah. In other words, information and not transformation. So we can part lots and lots of information to our children, and we have, alhamdulillah, a deen which is ocean rich, it's ocean deep and rich in terms of knowledge. And when that knowledge is parted to children, we tend to focus so much on the facts and the information, and we kind of lack, from what I've seen over my 15 years, we lack in the transformational techniques, or the techniques that transform the individuals or transform the information that's given to them. And it really is about that. It's about not so much of what we do, but actually how we go about imparting that. So I hope that, inshallah, in this seminar or webinar this evening, which I'm going to keep quite light and hopefully not information heavy, is going to transform something. It's going to sow a seed in you. I know that you're probably already doing most of this. If you are, that's fantastic. Please, I would love to hear from you. Do contribute by the FAQ section or contribute through the chat. So without further ado, I really was given an opportunity here, and I jumped for it because I have a great admiration and great love for the Bromley community, and in particular, the work that you are doing at Al-Emaan Center. It wasn't only not long ago, I think it was a year ago, for those of you who attended the seminar that Dr. Omar, mashallah, had organized, and where I visited for the first time to your community. And I was immediately drawn to the warmth and the ikram and the love that your community had shown to a visitor, a northerner like myself coming down to the south of England, and really sharing some of the strategies around this particular topic and around the vision of ilm to amal. And I have fond memories of you. And immediately I didn't hesitate to, despite having a very busy schedule, I didn't hesitate to jump to help and work with you on this one. And for those of you who attended that particular seminar a year ago, I think it was just over a year ago, I talked a lot about the philosophy of education, the identity crisis facing a lot of our young people and old people for that matter, and how we as educators can go about re-engineering some basic changes. I think were required to re-engineer the entire education, Islamic education, or the tarbiyah angle, so that our children could really, make sense, find sense of purpose, belonging, and responsibility. And on that note, I will crack on, because there's a testimonial that came in from number of parents today, but in particular one that actually struck me, which I want to share with you. So without further ado, I would like to just crack on from the introduction. To break the ice a little bit, I think I would like to ask some of you to think about, in particular, when we're talking about character education. I'm assuming you know what character education is here, so I will come on to that in a short while to clarify what we mean by character, because it is actually misunderstood globally. And also, I think in the Muslim community that I've traveled, and particularly the Muslim educators, it is quite misunderstood. So it's worth clarifying what character actually means. But if I was to ask you, what character traits do you want to see in your, in your children? And I think it would be really good for you to start thinking now, to get your brain into gear, or your mind sort of energized. What kind of character traits do you want to see in your children? That's the first question. Of course, how are we going to basically bring that into our life, or into their life, or into our homes is another challenge and another discussion in itself, and no doubt the one we need to lead to. I'm not going to talk too much about the what folk, because how many conferences have we all been to? How many training programs have we sat in? How many webinars have we invested in, where we are bought into the idea already of tarbiyah, akhlaq, character, identity in our Muslim children, and we hear far too often too much on the what and the why. Not enough emphasis is given on how. How do we actually bring this stuff that we've already bought into our life and our children's life? How do we actually make it work? So I want Ilm to Amal's philosophy is really on bringing learning to life, doing more than talking. Let the actions walking the talk, and bringing sort of concepts into life. That's what we really believe in as a team. So I want to just start the mind rolling about what kind of character traits do you want to see in your children? Is it resilience, You know, as a Muslim growing up with lots of Islamophobia around, hate crimes around, is it resilience? Do you want to see them as with wisdom, caring, compassionate individuals, trustworthy, reliable? I mean, there's responsible leaders, respectful, obedient. I mean, the list is so long. Have you got an idea of what you want in your children? I think ultimately this is a good place to start for parents, is to what is your vision for your children? And that's a good place to start strategically. Okay, so in terms of what I had next was the focal point of this particular session. Again, I wanted to keep it very light. I am at the moment doing 2 hours, 3 hour webinars on this particular topic because it is a really important need. But I'm here going to limit it to something like 20 minutes, inshallah. And I would love to hear Q&A on the back of this. And no doubt, consider me as one of your community members, as one of your stakeholders, one of your friends. I consider you like my second home. And if we have to expand on particular topics throughout the month of Ramadan or the course of this pandemic, however long it lasts, that's not really an issue for us, folks. Alhamdulillah, as long as I'm living, inshallah, we will do our very best to share strategies and techniques with you. The focal point of this particular session was really on the what and the how. I just want to touch on what is actually meant by character education, because when you're offering tarbiyah to your children at home, it's important to understand the distinguish between ta'aleem, tarbiyah, and tahdib. In other words, etiquettes or the embodiment of values or manners or social etiquettes. And really, that's what I want to basically move from the ta'aleem angle, distinguishing between the tarbiyah and tahdib, which is really rooted in adab or etiquettes. And then I want to move on to this more quicker than sooner than later, which is actually you as parents having the practical ways or the resources at hand to get started in terms of, you know, nurturing character values or virtues, as we call them, skills, and shaping the attitudes of your children at home using the resources and activities that are available. And the good news there is, I'm not talking to you here as some academic who's sat in a university for 15, 20 years, enjoys the PhD, enjoys the research, and talking to you about an abstract concept. I've done it the other way around, where we've invested the best part of 2 decades in actual feedback from testing, piloting of curriculum, material, learning strategies, philosophies, inside of the classroom, outside of the classroom, inside the home, outside of the home, with parents, with children. And I'm coming to you now presenting something that's actually already in the making. And that's something that I would like to point you towards. Now, just to get the juices flowing, I guess, here's something that actually is what is actually happening. And this happened just yesterday. I've just taken this from the Ilm to Amal Instagram page at Ilm to Amal. I will mention the address shortly. But this is a campaign that the team has been running called the Ramadan Superhero Challenge. So in other words, Ramadan is a month for sharpening the saw, improving our character, improving our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His Rasul, His book, His deen. And really it's about 1 month, 30 days of training for the remainder 300 plus 30 days. And that's really 11 months, you know, that we take, whatever we learn here, we apply for the rest of the calendar year. And what you can see here is the impact that when tarbiyah is done properly, and it's done with the right intentions, it's done with the transformational objectives in mind. So we're not just learning for the sake of learning, but we're learning to practice. And the best way to learn to practice is to learn through practice or through experience or through amal, hence the name. And excuse me. Here you see on the left, you see a young boy, 5 years old, who's reached out to his 90-year-old neighbor, Bernie. I mean, the smile on his face and the smile on her face says it all. She takes about 10 minutes to reach the window or the door because she lives all alone. And the little boy here, whose name is Daoud, and his father would basically, you know, they went on to a Ramadan Superhero Challenge with the Ilm to Amal. It's a 30-day challenge. Every day a challenge is released, and parents and children alike are enjoying the challenges a day, and they're all to do around character development. And this particular character development this particular character challenge was around the concept of love. So if you are interested in instilling love in your children, or wanting your children to be lovable and loving, this was something that we did yesterday, and today's challenge would have another character virtue, another one the day after, another one the day before. So you see how it works, is that you pick the virtues that you want to nurture and you build your activities around that particular virtue. That seems very complicated, but actually all of the hard work has been done and is being done for you around the clock by this organization called Transformational, which I head up. And we've set it with that because it's a niche. There's nothing like it out there, and we wanted to do something different and not reinvent the wheel. This is something that you can see here on the right hand side. You can see the same thing. Children are baking cookies with the parents to demonstrate love of someone special to them, and many of them went out to their neighbors, as you can see here, not just non-Muslim neighbors but also Muslim. There's a good balance there. This one was particularly about intergenerational sort of values in terms of grandparents, which are lonely at this time. And these are children who are baking, learning skills of cooking and baking with their parents, and a hands-off approach, a very supportive or a facilitator approach, where they're taking the lead and learning skills, enjoying the Ramadan, bringing the spirit of Ramadan to life. And they're actually going out then and doing social action, with social distancing, as you can see. And this was in Preston, and this was in Pendle in Lancashire. So it is phenomenal, and the feedback has been so amazing. One of the comments that came back today actually touched the hearts of our team, and in particular myself, was a comment by one parent who said, the price of basically putting a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging, a sense of achievement or an accomplishment in our children is invaluable. There's no cost for it. I mean, they only paid what, £8.99 or £10 for a book that looks something like this for them to get started. And this is what I mean, that all the hard work has been done for you as parents. That's all they invested in. And what is £8, £9 for bringing a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging and a sense of responsibility in our children? Other parents have contacted me and said, we don't have flour at home to make the cookies, but we have gone to the end of the motorways to find flour because our children are going to be upset that they're not going to be able to do the challenge today. And I saw that as a very positive thing, because for those of us who send our children to independent schools where we have to pay, others who send them to state schools won't understand that. But, as a parent who basically sends his children to an independent private school where they have to pay, I'm paying teachers to nurture a sense of purpose, give them a sense of belonging and a sense of responsibility to lead an exemplary life, and they are struggling. And here we have our children who are waking up with a simple strategy, with a simple formula, that are basically upset because they can't do the homework. And I thought this is an amazing
Sheikh,
thing.
sorry, can I just interrupt a little? I'm not sure we're seeing the right...
This competition has actually started, as I mentioned, is a superhero training camp. This started in the month of Ramadan. This started actually before Ramadan, and you needed to have your book with you, which is something that we've put together. So this is a book that's full of character strengths and activities that basically have been very carefully engineered. It's not I wouldn't see this as just another Ramadan book, because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So everything that we were trying to get out in terms of transformation has been carefully knitted together in this book and engineered, so much so that children can pick this up and immediately start.
Sheikh, sorry, can I just interrupt a second? I'm not sure we're seeing the right slide.
Okay, sorry, I realized somebody was trying to interject. Was somebody trying to interject from admin? I'm sorry if you couldn't. If you want to just drop me a message.
Yeah, no, Sheikh, sorry, we can't see the correct slide. I'm not sure if your PowerPoint is going along with your talk.
I'm sorry. So what slide can you see at the moment?
It's just the introduction slide.
Oh, that's a shame, because I'm actually, okay, apologies, folks. I've moved on from there, and I was actually assuming that you could see it all. So I don't know what the technical issue there is, but I am resume share. So let's have a look. Can you see that?
Yes, that's much better. That's getting better. No, do you want to now share the screen again?
Okay, let me try it again. Sorry, apologies, folks. I thought I was I had you guys following me there. Can you see the character traits you want to share in your children?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, just bear with me. Can you see that?
Can you just go backwards and forwards on each one, just a couple of slides, just so we can see you moving between them?
Okay.
Yeah, that's working now, Sheikh. Jazakallah
Okay.
khair.
So you've not, can I just clarify, the audience hasn't moved from the first slide?
That's correct, yeah.
Apologies, folks. Okay. All right. I hope you're stuck, inshallah. So let me start again then. Okay. So I will just show you the slide so you can get an idea, inshallah, of what I was talking about. I'm going to have a look at the chat at the same time. Yes, I can't see what he's talking about. I just see some intro slides. Okay, I got that. Thank you, Sayyid. And okay, I should have listened to that earlier. Sorry, my apologies, folks. No problems, inshallah. So this is the first slide I said about what character traits do you want to see in your children. There's just a few there. My team has pulled out something like 100, 99, 98 character strengths from the Quran and the Sunnah. And I think it's up to you what you would like to see in your children. And I think, inshallah, that's something to get your mind focused in this webinar. If you already haven't done, I'm sure many of you done this, but try to distinguish between what are those character traits, what are values, what qualities do you want to see? I mean, there's a whole host of things. What do you want? What's your vision for your children? And then no doubt for yourself as parents. That was the first slide coming in. I talked about this point here about what and how, that I want to focus more on the how eventually, which is, excuse me, taking you through practical ways that you can start to nurture character strengths and skills and values of your children at home during this pandemic. And in all honesty, there's no better time to do it. If you're not going to do it during these few months that we're off home, I don't think we'll ever do it. Absent fathers, you know, single mums or mums who are doing all the legwork. If we don't do the things that we were designed to do, made to do with our children, spending time with them during this time, I don't think we'll ever do it. And I'm talking about myself, someone who spends most of the time on the road and lives like a stranger with his own children. Excuse me, I have a cough. Hopefully not a serious one. Excuse me. And this was what I was trying to demonstrate. So I hope you can see what I was talking about in terms of the Ramadan Superhero Challenge. I won't go too much on that. I've spoken a bit on that. You can see the young boy and the 90-year-old neighbor who's all alone, and what that means to them in terms of what we can achieve when we ourselves and our children practice what we learn. That is true da'wah, and that is what actually moves hearts. Our actions actually move hearts, and that's what we've got to look at. And these are young children who are basically really finding a sense of purpose and a belonging and responsibility in their studies, in their education, and ultimately education that gives those three things, a sense of purpose, belonging, responsibility, is when you have that, that is everything that the child needs, or even every human needs. We need a purpose, we need a belonging, and we need a responsibility to flourish. And here you can see further stuff I mentioned. So without going over the old slides, I thought this was a very powerful slide, the particular one of the two boys with the two neighbors side by side in Preston, in Lancashire. And this is phenomenal stuff. This is really, you know, it's all designed, as I was saying, in this book, which is part of this Ramadan superhero training camp that I was talking about. So I'm not going to go over all ground because I think I've lost enough time there, but this is basically something that's already started. Unfortunately, you know, okay, you can't be part of the competition. There are other mini competitions that are running, but the book is still available. It's all designed. The proof is in the pudding. When you see it, you'll understand. And hundreds of parents, mashallah, tabarakallah, are participating in this every day. And it's phenomenal thing in our team, you know, to see the inbox filled every day with proof and testimonials of parents and their children of how they're, mashallah, getting through this pandemic. And honestly, it's amazing how this sad situation, this, you know, unfortunate times, actually there's a silver lining in this, and there's so much wisdom in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this period, that we are seeing the things that we were talking about and lobbying for the last 15 years, you know, parents taking control, tarbiyah being given, more activity-based learning taking place, less information, more transformation. It's phenomenal how that all of that now is actually coming to the forefront, and parents are taking this very, very seriously. So in terms of the solutions, you can find lots and lots of stuff that I'm talking about now that might be technical, might be abstract, theory-based. It's all pretty much now knitted nicely for you to be able to pick this up as a parent at home. And don't worry about not being a qualified teacher. Don't worry about not having the necessary, sort of prerequisite training. You don't need that. Honestly, you know your child better than anybody out there. And the emotional connection that you have with your child can never be replaced by another person, at school. They're very important people or teachers, but the most important murabbi in the life of the child is the mother, and the father. And that's really important for us to understand the hikmah behind that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is really important, and that doesn't mean the fathers have less role. Fathers have a very important role to play, and it's situational at times. But honestly, folks, you can find, I'm sort of running out of time, but in terms of this i2astore.com, if you go here, we've made lots of free resources, which I'm going to come on to now, that you can have a look at. There's free downloadable resource packs that we put together. They're very practical, very transformational, and lots of creativity, bite-sized activities which have been put together for you in terms of resource packs. You can pick these up and start delivering these off the cuff. You can start, it's self-explanatory. I've done it again and again with my children. My wife has been basically doing this at home, and this is what my children actually look forward to. Genuinely, they're behind the camera. As I said, you can speak to any one of them for a genuine testimonial. But there's free downloads. We've designed these. Those of you who are teaching the Untitled syllabus, so I don't know if anybody here is from KMCA, one of our partner institutes, mashallah, down there in Beckenham nearby, who are delivering the Untitled syllabus, you will recognize the activities, the resources, and they will be the first ones to tell you. So yes, we have Sister Aisha, mashallah, assalamu alaikum, Sister Aisha, online. The KMCA guys will be the first ones to tell you about these resources, how they are very self-explanatory. They're designed for people to pick them up with very limited Islamic backgrounds or education. It's more about, can you facilitate with that creature in front of you that we call a child or children? Can you facilitate learning as opposed to teaching? And this is a really important saying that I really hold dear to myself, and I try to follow in my life when I'm either with my children or I'm in the classroom or I'm even with adults here, which is that it's really important to be a guide on the side and not a sage on the stage. And I think that's really important for us. And these free downloadable resources packs, honestly, they're there for you to take them. They cost you absolutely nothing. Just got to log your details into the website, download them, and get started. That's where the proof in the pudding is. Everything I'm going to talk to you about, character and all sorts of stuff, you can be found there. And there's some well-being resource packs. Now, when this pandemic started off, I saw a lot of pressure on parents put down. Unfortunately, the schools had no choice but to set up online learning, and we're very grateful for all the teachers that are working around the clock to keep the intellectual development of our children ongoing and continuous, and that's important, no doubt. But intellectual development, my dear respected brothers and sisters, intellectual development is one part of human development. And if we look at the life of ourselves and our children who've been through the education system, it's really about intellectual development, and that's about it. You might get away with some emotional development or mental development or moral development. I think the schools are changing massively in the decades since I went to school, and it's less so much on moral development and less so much on emotional development. It's very heavy on intellectual development, and I'm not saying intellectual development is not important. Of course it is, but alongside that, right, packaged around intellectual development, there is spiritual development, moral development, cultural development, emotional development, social development, and physical development. And all these 6 or 7 parts under the acronym of M-SPICES, they have a very important part in our children, and we are doing a disservice to our children if we are only developing them on 1, 2, or 3, 4 things and not the entire thing. And tarbiyah should be holistic. We should be developing the whole human, the whole child. And when this pandemic kicked off a couple of weeks ago, there was a very strong force on intellectual development and academia and sort of the stuff that they're learning, math, science, English, and those things basically, which are really important and taught at school. I'm not against that. My own children had to go through that. What we did as parents was put that to the back. Put that to the back. You know, we took the bold approach and said, okay, this is really important. But right now in the world, there's so many things happening. There's so much uncertainty. There's so much anxiety. The most important thing is the mental and the emotional, as well as the spiritual well-being of us, the murabbi, the adults, and the children. And until we are going to invest 2, 3 weeks or months in preserving those things, right? Those qualities, the mental ones, the emotional well-being, as well as the spiritual well-being. These 3 things in particular, we're going to build on these when the world is absolutely uncertain about what's going to happen. And only then after that, we can basically look at intellectual development and other potentials. But you can't do much with, concrete. You can't sow a seed in a concrete that's hard or broken. And so I think it's really important to fertilize the land, and you've got to look at the emotional and mental well-being of children. And again, you will see these packs, which are absolutely free to download. They're taken from the Al-Emaan syllabus, which is being taught in schools. Mental health, dealing with stress, keeping fit. Moving on, there are some very, very good story and activity books which our team has put together, and this was actually done preemptively before we knew there was a pandemic. These were basically our ways of bringing the tarbiyah from the classroom back into the home place and letting parents proactively lead on the tarbiyah of the children through storybooks and activity books. And these are 2 books in particular which we launched recently, and they've been an amazing success, alhamdulillah. One is The Flying Carpet, and the other one is My Brother's Shield, which is basically part of a brother and sister, Adam and Anisa, who basically adventure through the 5 pillars. And these are the 2 pillars of Ramadan and Salah. And this is what the campaign that I'm referring to revolves around. And the proof, if you go onto the Instagram of Untitled Chapter, you can see social proof of parents in the hundreds with their children having an amazing transformational experience. And that's what we are talking about, the transformational experience of how we can do that with our children. And it's very hard to demonstrate that over online or as a presentation. The proof is in the pudding, as I say. You've got to see how a particular activity or a particular resource works with your children over them. So alongside resources, books, so there's lots of free stuff on there. You can buy the storybooks. They do come at a small cost for the charity to regenerate some income. It's not a lot, actually. They're selling it nominally. But alongside that stuff, more importantly, we have also lots of support facilities for you. The organization is running, actually, it's forced everybody online. We have story time on Saturdays with Ustada Abiha. Again, it's Adam and Anisa's adventures. And that's been an amazing success with parents all over the world so far. And that's at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. You can catch the next one every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock with Ustada Abiha, a story with activities and resources, and lots of competitions that she runs week in, week out. There's bonus activities and competitions that we're running as an organization. The one that we're running at the moment is actually the one about Anas building his shield, which you can see right there. So there's a competition for children to build a shield, and the shield is based on the hadith of the one that we find about fasting is a shield in Bukhari. And so basically this is a competition that children are doing at this moment in time. Details are on the website. It's due on Thursday. Previously, a few weeks ago, we had one on the flying carpet, which was a prayer mat. Children from all over the world and all over the country blew us away with their creativity in designing their prayer mat. And it was phenomenal to see this. It's really amazing to see the creativity of children coming through. So this is story time that takes place alongside the resources that we've put together around character development. Something that I've been assigned to and something I'm very passionate about. This is something I deliver, the Super Sahaba series. Again, it's around the superheroes theme. and looking at the super qualities of the superpowers of the Sahaba that we can bring into our life as adults and into the life of our children. And this is a story for the whole family, which is actually being delivered on Wednesdays between 12 and 1. So the last session was last week, first one, and the next one's going to be this week on Wednesday. Again, you can tune in to the Ilm to Amal YouTube channel at Ilm, ILM, number 2, AMAL, Amal, Ilm to Amal, so that's at Ilm to Amal on YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. And the details are there that you can see in terms of character building activities, which are geared for young people, but also for the family. And that's what you will find, brothers and sisters. I can assure you from the feedback that I've had, KMC, I've had the same feedback from you. I've had this from hundreds of institutes, and during this pandemic, lots and lots of hundreds of parents saying that these resources and the character strengths and the virtues and the values that we're trying to teach our children are not just for our children, these are for ourselves first and foremost. And I think that's a really important point to make. You can go on there and see everything I'm talking about, it's there. And I wanted to put this, usually this stuff is at the back of a presentation. I wanted to put this at the front in case I bore somebody to death after 15, 20 minutes, or I myself snooze off because it's been a long day. I thought this was really important, that you can find everything I'm talking about in concrete, absolute stuff. It's all there for you to have a look at. Now, very quickly, I'm just conscious of time and I would love to open up for Q&A. I'm just gonna have a look in terms of any questions that have come through, any chat. Okay, brilliant. Thank you to Brother Abbas for putting on the link. That's fantastic. I'm just going to see if there's any Q&A, so I'm not ignoring anybody. Okay, I'll carry on for a little bit more longer. What you can see here, brothers and sisters, has gone back to, so coming back to what is character, this is important for us to understand when we're trying to do tarbiyah of our children at home, okay? Because Islamic education is very, very broad, mashallah. It's very rich. It's traditionally, it's always been about rote learning, memorization, and what contemporary educators would call as passive learning. In other words, passive learning is where you're not really interacting much with the learner. It's mainly the learners, sort of learning independently. In other words, through reading, through literature, through listening, perhaps, maybe through watching and listening. And this is what contemporary educators call passive learning. And it has its benefits, but for the contemporary child today, okay, it's quite limited in terms of how information is retained or sticks. So I'm just gonna have a look at the question and answers. I can see some chat coming through. Okay, so if you can type out the questions and we can read them, inshallah. For those of you who would like to type a question, that's fantastic, inshallah. No doubt I'll take many questions at the end of this session, inshallah, which is going to end shortly. So I want to just really touch upon our understanding of what is character. And this is important because it's quite misunderstood, as I said before. It's defined by the Jubilee Center for Character and Virtues in Birmingham, which is a specialist faculty set up for this area of character education. We understand character as the intrinsic traits. So the first thing is intrinsic, not extrinsic. These are personal traits that we have, character traits you can call them, or dispositions that basically produce a specific emotion. And here it's referred as moral emotion, which either gives us motivation, informs motivation, or it guides behavior or output of conduct. And that's what really it is. So it's an intrinsic set of virtues. Okay, there could also be vices. So virtues is a positive thing. Vices are a negative thing, obviously. So virtues, an example of that would be, for example, honesty. And that's an intrinsic virtue that we have. Okay, resilience is another one. There's tons of these. And a vice could be greed, okay, or jealousy or envy. You can see you have virtue and you have vice. These are traits that all of us have intrinsically, or we have the potential for them intrinsically. Now, in terms of what we look at it from a tarbiyah perspective, character education, dear respected brothers and sisters, is actually, there's 3 key points here that I've taken from Jubilee, who are experts in this area. Number 1 is that we've got to look at activities. So it's not so much passive learning, but active learning, which I'll come on to. Excuse me. It's active learning or activities that actually help our children develop, nurture, embed, pick up, pick up the personal strengths that we want them to basically pick up, what we call now virtues, as I mentioned. These are the traits that we're talking about. Then there's the other thing with character is that it's not something that's something always, it is taught, but it's not always something that is taught. It can be caught in terms of the culture, and it can be caught in terms of the environment. And it can be also, sort of sought in terms of opportunities that we give our children for them to go out and push the boundaries and discover new oceans. So this is something that is not really a subject. It's more than a subject because it has a place in the culture of the house, culture of family setting, the classroom, the clubs, the school environment, the community. This is the whole world is basically a classroom for our children when it comes to tarbiyah, and in particular character education. And the third point there is that what's the objective of basically character education, what we're trying to do? And character education really is about giving them practical wisdom, which is what the Greek called it. And that's translated as practical wisdom. In other words, being ethically in control or ethically conscious about what to do or making the right decision in the right way, in the right moment, if that makes sense. So doing the right thing in the right way at the right time. And that's what we call about practical wisdom, ethically what is important in situations or situation leadership, and acting upon in the right way and in the right reasons. In other words, it's trying to make our children autonomous and reflective in their practice of virtue. Who here doesn't want their child to be independent of them? Everybody, right? Of course, we're not going to be here for the whole life of our children. So we've got to prepare them to stand on their own 2 feet. And I think this is why I think character education is so important for many, many reasons. So coming back to this, what character traits do you want to see in your children? I think the second question is really important. I'm no doubt you've got a list. If there's anybody who would like to share a list of the things that they've basically come up with for the children, I would love to hear that. And this is a beautiful exercise as a research study to see actually what do parents want to see in their children. And the next question is, whatever you choose, most importantly, you're going to face this dilemma of, I want resilience in my children. You could even put a Y on that, because it's not cool to be a Muslim these days. So I want to nurture resilience. Ultimately, you're going to be faced with one question looking in the mirror. How are you going to develop resilience? What are you going to do in the time that you have with your children? On a normal day, that would be very limited. These days, alhamdulillah, they're in front of us, we are with them. How are you going to nurture character development or resilience in your children? I'll take questions in a minute. I'm just going to finish on a few slides, and then I will open up the floor for question Q&A. I would like to share with you one of the formulas. This is a well-known formula by William Glasser, who was sort of the inspiration behind, the NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, which is all about brain science in terms of how the brain works. And what William Glasser did was actually look at how we retain information. And this is a well-known pedagogical theory in terms of passive learning versus active learning. And I've mentioned two things, passive learning versus active learning. What I mean by that, folks, is the following. How does learning stick? I mean, how do you think learning sticks? Is it done through reading, lecturing, audiovisual like this? Or is it done through other things, like what other things can we do to make learning stick? And I'm just conscious of time. This is the findings that William Glasser basically put towards us. This is going back 3 decades, subhanAllah, 3 decades now, 3 decades, sorry. We can see, sorry, 4 decades. We can see the percentages from his studies, which show that actually reading, lecturing is actually less than reading, is 5%. Reading, we will retain only 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear sound. And from seeing, light travels faster than sound. So, what we see visually actually is stronger than what we hear. But if you combine visual and sound together, that bumps it up to 50%. In other words, we got half a chance of basically what we retain, what we read, we retain half of that. But what's more powerful than audio-visual? This is audio-visual right now, so you're going to be retaining 50%. Unless I do 3-4 things with you now, you're only going to look, you'll be lucky and I'll be fortunate if you can retain 50% of what's being shared with you tonight, which is my cue to say, look, I've got to move on and get into Q&A now. 70% of what we, how we learn or how we retain information is actually through discussion. And 80%, what's better than that, is actually when we have a physical experience, or we have an experience that basically in the classroom or outside the classroom or in the home, we learn from that. So here, you don't need to do anything rocket science. A lot of parents and teachers say to me, this is going to be really expensive. Actually, no. My son, who's now starting to snooze off, good night, son. My son who's snoozing off over there now. Experience means giving my boy a hug when he needs that hug, and comforting him emotionally. That could be a physical experience for him. For my daughter, it could be, let's do some baking together. It could just be a conversation, which is like discussion. It could be just the fact that I tune in to his emotional or her emotional needs. Experience could be adventuring out and doing the fun things. The experience is such a huge area, but we need more experience. Unfortunately, if you look at our Islamic education, there just simply is not enough experience in the learning process, in the learning cycle, inside of the classroom. There just is not enough experience or experiential learning taking place in our education institutes, which nurture skills, which broaden horizons, which challenge fear, help children conquer their fear, come out of their comfort zone, into their fear zone, grapple with their fear zone, come out of their fear zone, into the learning zone, and then eventually into the growth zone. We don't have enough opportunities, unfortunately, to my estimation. And what could be better than discussion and experience? What do you think could be better than discussion and experience in terms of dissembling facts, concepts, theories, learning points, and then reassembling them or reconstructing them and recreating or creativity? What could get us to critical thinking creativity is actually when we are encouraged to teach the topic that we're trying to learn. And that's an interesting topic, because many would say to you, no, you need to learn first and then you need to teach. Actually, I disagree. Teaching to learn is more powerful than anything. And it shows there from William Glasser that 95% of what we teach will actually stick with us. We will retain that information. Why did I show you this slide? Why did I show you the techniques of learning that retain information? Because these are the very strategies for transformational learning that we need to have in our syllabus and in our home place where we are actually imparting with our children. So if you're shouting to them and you're speaking to your children and you're raising your voice and not your words, and you're wondering why the child doesn't listen, right? It's because they're not involved. And when they're not involved, they're not going to basically, they're not going to see, they're not going to have a sense of belonging because you're doing all the hard work for them. So I think the most important thing is to involve our children. And this is the reason why my children, even though all three of them are flat now, sleeping behind the camera here, they're involved in this experience of the father going on a webinar, talking about the very things that I'm actually doing with them. And even though they've gone to sleep, I'm happy with that actually they've fallen asleep being involved, right, in something that they actually value. And we've got to look at that, folks. Ultimately, I will end on a few slides now where I think if you're asking me for some tips in terms of, okay, how do we do character development? Nothing, no resource, no syllabus, no online tool, no magic wand, no device can nurture your children better than you. And that's called modeling. Not modeling in terms of basically looking prim and proper, modeling in terms of watch me and learn. When the people went to the Sahaba Ajma'in, and the Sahaba went to, when the Sahaba went to foreign lands, they couldn't speak the language of Malay in Malaysia. They couldn't speak the language of Chinese. They couldn't speak the language of Persia. They couldn't speak the languages of the lands, even though they were very quick learners and they learned foreign languages. Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu learned Hebrew in 15 days.
right? Even though they were very sharp individuals and they could learn the language of the places that they went to for tijara, for business and for dawah, they had simple 3 words of dawah in Arabic, which was, if you want to learn Islam, kunu mithluna, watch me from head to toe, I will demonstrate to you what is Islam. In other words, they were modeling the very virtues that they wanted to see in the people, or the very aqidah that they wanted the people to embrace. And we have to take this, my dear respected brothers and sisters, really seriously to ask ourselves, one, what is the character virtues or strengths or traits or values that we want to in our children? Do we actually have a clear list, a clear set of goals for them? 1. 2, how are we going to do it the best way? And there is no shortcut in this. There is no shortcut in this. I'm actually teaching this to learn this myself, right? That there is no shortcut, no nanny and nobody, no Maulana or Murabbi or Mudarris in a maktab or a school or a madrasa is going to be able to model the behavior that I want to see in my children if I am not doing it myself. I know this is a cliche and I know it sounds like we've heard this so many times, we've read this so many times. Take it from me, after 15 years of going up and down the classrooms in this country and abroad and speaking with the parents at home, we're not going to be able to, it's not going to work. You're building a mansion, or you're wanting to build a mansion on sand if you are not the foundations, if you are not basically going to be the rock solid ground that's going to model the behavior, whether that's toothpaste, whether that's teaching them to wear clothes, tie the shoelaces, whether that's sitting with them and reading. Honestly, I'll give you an example very quickly. Anybody seen PE with Joe? Okay, so when PE with Joe came on YouTube, the first day, there was something like 1 million people, I think something like 900,000 people tuned in. I was one of them. Actually, sorry, I wasn't one of them. My children were one of them, or 2, 3 of them. And whilst I put them up in front of the YouTube channel and got PE with Joe on automation, Joe was having a great time. He's still having a great time, mashallah. And the children, they started for 5 minutes because I told them. So they went for conformity, conforming to what Abba had asked them to do. Okay, Baba asked them to do. I went off to make myself a nice healthy breakfast. And whilst I was making breakfast, I looked over, in 10 minutes they'd gone. They'd gone back to find the devices, they'd gone to do other things. So my children weren't there. I contacted a friend and we were speaking, and he reminded me that actually, you know, one of the best ways to do it, Waqaus, is be involved with them. And I thought, subhanAllah, how many times have I lectured on this? And I'm still lecturing on this. So next morning, there I was in my lycra shorts, in my kit, up nice and early with my children, setting the standards. And we saw 30 minutes through, sweating away. And I thought, this is amazing. It's true. When we are involved with our children, my dear respected brothers, I think it's really important to basically see the transformational children, because they see with their eyes and they look at us, that are we doing the things that we want to see in them. So I want to end here. Actually, I've come to the end of the slides anyway. They admin have given me a very good note. Apologies, I've gone over because of the earlier hiccup. I'm going to end it here, but there's 6 other areas at the moment that presentation, because these are the common questions that come up from parents, and I'm just going to mention them on the slide. They're actually there on the slide. You can see them in 3 categories and 6 areas. And this is coming up from a number of webinars that we're doing alongside this topic, because you can't just do this topic without those areas. One is about knowing your child. In other words, understanding them before you seek to be understood. And that involves psychometric testing, personality. Do you know your child? Do you know what kind of personality your child has? Number 1. Number 2, do you know their love language? Do you know what makes them tick? Okay, this seems scientific, but it's quite easy, and there's honestly easy apparatus and easy tools available to help you do that. The second part is, do you know yourself? Do you know your parenting style, your teaching style? Are you modeling the character values that you want to see, which is what I've been talking about for the bulk of this presentation, in your child? If not, why not? Do you know how to do them? Do you know the do's and don'ts of how to do it right and how to do it wrong? And last but not least is creating, as I mentioned, the culture, the environment for learning to, enabling them to grow as individuals. So do you learn through practice because the objective of learning is to practice, but you learn through practice, through experience, through discussion. If not, how do we go about inculcating that? How do you start doing that? And I share this as a parent, not talking to you as some expert educator. This is as a parent. And last but not least is this important concept of how do you keep children motivated? Lots of parents are asking that, what do you do to keep your children motivated? So rewards with fear and accountability, how do we basically action all of that? I've gone over my time. I apologize to brothers and sisters. For those of you who stayed tuned, Allah bless you. For those who have gone, inshallah, they can catch this, no doubt, probably on a recording. But there's a website, once again, i2astore.com, for you to get the ready-made resources. There are free downloads in there. The storybooks are also, you can get them from the store. There's lots of activity books in Ramadan. It's still not too late. I don't think it's too late to be able to get your copy ordered today and get started with those activities on a daily basis. On the Instagram post, there's competitions that are coming every week. There's story time weekly sessions on the Wednesday and the Saturday that you can get at Ilm to Amal. And I would like to end there and say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, shukr to Allah that He allowed us to get to Ramadan. Shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the team Al-Emaan Center for once again thinking of me and giving me an opportunity to share some of these tips with you. If there's any, inshallah, if there's any feedback, any question and answers, please by all means do share them. I'm going to have a look at your Q&A, inshallah.
Jazakallah, Shaykh. Can you take off your mic so you can hear me properly?
Yes, that's off. Can you hear me? The mic's off, actually.
Okay, excellent. Well, Jazakallah khair for your talk. It was very thorough, and you're clearly very passionate about your project, and you're doing obviously some great work. Unfortunately, we did run quite a bit over, so we're not going to be able to go through Q&A right now because we're waiting on another Shaykh to do his Quran recitation. But what we would like to do is get you back, Shaykh, for another session, and perhaps the Q&A we could perhaps kick off with next time to just get through those questions, and people can assimilate the information that you've given them. So could I ask you, Shaykh, just to finish with a short dua again, and then we'll wrap up the session.
I would just like to apologize to the Sheikh who's waiting for my session to finish. I wholeheartedly apologize. I've lost track of time in this session. I was meant to finish a good half an hour ago, and I sincerely apologize to the following speaker. So forgive me for that, please. And for those of us who have been waiting for me to finish, I will inshallah end with this dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Oh Allah, protect our children in this state in this calamity, protect our elders, protect ourselves, protect Muslim and non-Muslim alike, Ya Allah, in this pandemic, and guide our children to be the guiding stars of Islam, and protect them and their Iman in uncertainty, in hostility and the difficult climate that we find ourselves in. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to that which pleases Him, and may this Ramadan be a month of training for us to be excellent throughout the calendar year. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah, Shaykh, again. Thank you for gracing our online platform, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you again later on in the month, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.